Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Skippy and welcome to another video. So the Maiden of the SE5 didn't quite end up as I'd hoped. A bit of a crash landing at the end. I've lost the battery hatch, couldn't find it. It's a problem when you paint things in camouflage, couldn't find it in the field. But it all is fixable. I'll get it off the wall and I'll show you in a second. But it actually took off really nicely. I'm really annoyed that I had the camera setting wrong. I had it on hyperlapse or time lapse, and that's why I've had to try and get those snatched bits. So trust me, it was flying, and that one photo is actually my SE5 before I then crash landed it on the grass to my left. But if you watch the sequence of photos, you can tell it went out, came back round and landed. And what you can't tell from that photo is the battery was actually hanging out of the model. Yeah, I was quite lucky that I didn't break it even more, but we can fix it and we'll have a look in a second what we need to do. So as we can see, it's this side of the undercarriage that gave up when it took off. This side is really solid still. So rather than try and force it off, what I'm going to try and do is just fix this back in again. So I'll glue it, I'll pin it. What I'm thinking this time is I'm going to solder a cross brace of wire to keep the two of them together, and hopefully that will give it a bit more strength as well. And we'll see. I'm kind of finding my way through with these undercarriage on the biplane because it's not as easy to fit. And also they're not designed for the weight that it's carrying. But I reckon if I glue it, pin it, and then solder a piece of wire across, that should give it some more strength. And what I'm thinking of doing for the wheels themselves, where did I put it? There we go. Is cut a slot in the underneath that's wide enough for the wire, and drop the wire in like that and glue it in place. That way all the weight will then be, or any impact will then hit on the wire that's inside here rather than ripping through the balsa, which is what happened last time. So if the wire's underneath, it's not going to drop out and the impact will then be absorbed by the wire on both sides. So that's the plan, and we'll see how it goes this time. And obviously that's this stringer I need to re-glue. Prepare the paper and see how she goes. Okay, the photos show how I got the hatch to this stage, the same way I've made the other hatches, cutting the templates out off the plans. I've made them all in one solid piece, then I've cut them and cut the hollows out, placed them onto the strips, pinning them onto the model itself so I make sure they're aligned, and then put the holes in the rear here to go through cocktail sticks. And then the little magnets there, which I think are part of the problem, they weren't strong enough. What I've done this time is I've added slightly bigger magnets which hold a nice firm grip, but I think the problem I had is the battery lifted. Now on my other models I normally have the cocktail stick sticking out of here and then going into the fuselage. That's all well and good when you've built it to do that, but these are both flat ends so I can't insert it and drop it. So what I've done, I've created a little pinhole in the front there, if I can focus it, see it through there. And then on the front of the model, I've created a little locking mechanism. So slide this forward, the pin comes through that hole in the front here, and then locks it in place. So I will put the camera down and put it in there to show you. It's easier two-handed. So the battery hatch in with the magnets is more than enough. As you can see, when I hold it upside down, it doesn't move. The magnets hold it. The issue is when the battery's in there, if the battery bumps up and down in the model, I think that may have lifted the front end of the hatch. So now the hope is that if I slide this forwards, you can then see that it comes through onto the hatch, and I can't lift the hatch up. Slide this back, not too far, then the hatch comes off. There we go. So hopefully that will hold the hatch in place a lot better than just magnets. The SE.5A is back together for the third time. I've covered the holes with tissue and I doped it. I've put an extra screwed on piece of thin plywood which will hopefully hold the undercarriage legs on at the rear there. The front, obviously I pinned it, and then what I've done, if I can zoom it in, focus, I've also then wrapped thread around and super glued that. I've also used that same technique up here on the gear, so the axle is now glued into a slot on the underneath, so it's not going to be pushed up as it lands. It'll be pushed into the metal rod, and again I've also put cotton thread with thin CA glue to lock it all in place, so hopefully that means that the gear won't separate as it takes off, and with the piece at the back there it'll be a little bit more robust and not come off. Moving to the rest of the model, if I turn her over carefully, patch the two holes that we had created by whatever it was that flew off. Battery hatch has been replaced. It looks a lot neater. It's all doped up and ready for painting once she's had her next flight. Patched over the hole where the pin now goes, so you can see this just pulls back. Again, it's still got to do one-handed. So I pull that back, I can then lift the battery hatch off, push it forward, battery hatch is locked on. So I'm lifting it, weight of the airplane by the battery hatch, and it's not moving, so that's good, so that works. So hopefully we won't lose the battery hatch on the next flight. The only thing I haven't done is I haven't replaced the rigging wires on the undercarriage this time round. We'll see how it all goes first. So she's all finished, all built again, and we just now need to wait for better weather, and hopefully I'll remember to have the video set correctly or the camera set correctly, and you'll get to see her fly. I hope you found that useful again. Thanks for watching, please keep supporting, and yeah, let's look forward to the maiden of this. Okay, weather's good, there's no wind, so it doesn't matter which way I go. Got one person on the site, taken off into the sun. Had a bit of a faff getting the battery in, but the battery's now in. So hopefully we can get airborne. I'm going to take my camera off just to check that I am recording. Okay, control check. Fingers crossed everybody, and try not to land on the sheep. Uh-oh. So the battery cover came off, battery then came out, it lost its centre of gravity and it fell to the ground. Okay, gear survived. It all looks alright actually. That's quite impressive. I'll take the battery out when I get off the field. I will come and have another look for the battery cover in a sec. So bearing in mind she's spiraled down, I think the gear worked. Oh, it took off, which was fine. Little hole in the wing, but that's okay. Do you know what? I'm really pleasantly surprised that, considering that happened, it wasn't the end of the world. But annoyingly, I had trouble getting the battery cover on. It obviously wasn't on properly. It came off, and then the battery popped out. I think CFG went horribly wrong. Well, I had hoped that I'd be doing a second video of that final flight that you've just watched, but I figured, being as I haven't released the other video yet, rather than make you watch two crashes, I'd put it all into one video. So I've just done a little bit of editing now, and there we go. I think it's time to call it quits on the SE5A. I've learned a lot building it. As you've seen, there's been a few trials and errors. I think the biggest issue I've had, and quite a few of you have pointed out, the electrics for this model are just overkill, too heavy, and a couple of you have done your own builds of similar, so the DR1 and also the SE5, and you've used the smaller props, smaller ESC, battery, etc. And I think that's the key on this type of model. The positives that I've got, fixing the undercarriage, I think that worked really well. You know, the fact it took off, it had that crash landing at the end, but gear is solid. The wings didn't break, the top wing didn't separate this time, so that was a good learning point. So I think it hasn't put me off, but rather than bore you with another SE5A build or rebuild, I'm going to call it quits on this one. It'll go in my little archive of aeroplanes never to fly again, and I've got a lot of lessons learned from it. I hope it's helped you guys if you're going to look at building as well. I know some of you have had some really good success, but yes, thanks for watching. We reached over 800 subscribers yesterday, which is amazing, so thank you very much, and please keep an eye out for another video and we'll go from there. Thanks again.